Welcome to This Week with Susie. This is a show that brings you the political economy rendition of current issues. And this week, we will ask the question, is the Building Bridges initiative a quid pro quo alliance? Quid pro quo. This is a Latin phrase that is used to mean an exchange where one transfer is contingent upon the other. It is a favor for a favor, or you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. This expectation is accurately epitomized in the popular television series called Billions. This is an audacious show. It fuses opulence and influence with politics, power, and corruptions in New York City. And it stars two sworn arch-enemies, and these are personified by Bobby Axelrod on one hand, and he is a brilliant, calculating, ruthless billionaire hedge fund king. And on the other hand stars Chuck Rhodes, who is shrewd, blue-blooded, savvy, and politically connected U.S. attorney. The running theme is overtly Machiavellian, where all the characters inadvertently pay a very high personal price to satisfy their ambitions. Now, separately, Bobby and Chuck have a billion problems, but their perennial rivalry is no longer one of them, at least for the moment. Chuck is running for office as New York State Attorney General, and his competition is threatening to expose his secret and unorthodox sex life. Bobby, on his part, is facing serious competition from his once loyal prodigy, Taylor Mason, who has since struck out on her own. Now, both Bobby and Chuck realize they need each other's unorthodox means and influence to overcome their personal problems. So what do? They form an uneasy but highly effective alliance, and it becomes a quid pro quo alliance. Now, our own Kenyan rendition of Billions is playing out right in front of our own eyes, and it is in the form of the BBI. It is a classic case of life imitating art. The president, Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta, and the former prime minister, Mr. Raila Odinga, have been political arch-rivals whose genesis started with their fathers, who were also political rivals. Until recently, their political feud had been so bad that it had threatened to secede the nation into two separate countries. Governing the country became arduous. The economy got disrupted, and cohesive habitation amongst their supporters was threatened by ethnic tension. But something happened in March of 2018. They set aside their differences and formed an unprecedented alliance where they promised to heal the rift their rivalry had caused in the national psyche. This alliance has since been christened the Handshake, and it birthed the Building Bridges Initiative, or the BBI. Now, this is an advisory task force that was mandated to make practical recommendations and reform proposals that will help to build lasting unity, that will outline the policy, the administrative reform proposals, and implementation modalities for each of the 9 identified challenge areas. And they were also to conduct consultations with citizens across the nation. But many skeptics have turned the BBI a quid pro quo political and economic alliance between the two former antagonists. And in response, when launching the Nairobi-Suswa standard gauge railway line, the president condemned the handshake critics, labeling those opposed to the BBI as selfish politicians, seeking personal interests at the expense of millions of other Kenyans. In other words, what the president was telling us is this: you are either with us or against us. So begs the question, should the BBI be such a binary proposal? Should opposing it, even with rational arguments, define you as disloyal? He further reassured the nation that BBI was not a political ploy, but rather the legacy that he wished to leave the Kenyan people with. He wants to leave a legacy where an election outcome will never again cause the death of Kenyans, destruction of property, and division along tribal lines. And we all applaud him for desiring to put an end to this post-election Hobbesian culture, where our lives become short, nasty, and brutish. I submit, however, that BBI is not the panacea for our Hobbesian post-election state of nature. We already have the remedy for it, and it certainly does not cost the taxpayer the 10 billion shillings that the BBI has. That remedy is enshrined in our constitution. It is provided for in our legislation, and it is inculcated in our religions. In economic speak, it is called respect and protection of private property rights. This includes the right to life, the right to private property, and the freedom of association or disassociation without infringing on anyone else's rights. And all that the president needs to do is to ensure swift and conclusive enforcement of the same, regardless of the perpetrators. And in doing so, no one will ever again willy-nilly take another's life, destroy their property, or be forced to associate or disassociate. Now that is authentic freedom, and that is all that Kenyans truly desire. And the elusive national peace and unity will inevitably follow. But rather than being a breach, BBI is like a casino. Do you know why gambling is a multi-billion-dollar industry? It is because big profits are made by a few, as small amounts are lost by the gambling hopeful masses. And the owner of the casino never loses, because even with the odds stacked against the impoverished gambler, he keeps placing his bet, hoping to win. In gambling, this is called the sucker bet. And the reason why betting is a zero-sum game is because the casino owner's winnings is the gambler's losses. And so it is with initiatives such as BBI. Similar to gambling, if enough of us keep playing this binary game, it is the political class and the politically connected who will always win. This is because we keep placing our bets on political proposals and formations in search of political solutions. And we, the gambling masses, will never win. Yet, we keep placing our sucker bets. You know, there is a good reason why juries are sequestered. And this is to avoid accidental or deliberate influence that may interfere with their objectivity. Sequestration prevents other people who would have personal interests in the ongoing case from tampering with the jury's decision through undue persuasion, through threats, or through bribes. The BBI is expected to be impartial, regardless of their appointing principles. But can they truly be, with all the public pronouncements made by the two handshake principles, by those opposed to BBI, and by all their henchmen? But since we are not privy to the contents of the BBI report, the jury is still out on their objectivity. This week, my unsolicited advice finally is to Wanjiku. What you most want to find will be found where you least want to look. Likewise, if BBI is not the least likely place you want to look, then your answer clearly lies elsewhere. But in your quest for finding your answer, kindly do not destroy the good in search of the elusive perfect. And that is all from This Week with Susie, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for watching. From This Week with Susie, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for watching.